Hi, everyone. I'm Rohit. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Stilt. And today we have Sara with us again from Legalpad. Hey, Sara.
Hi, everyone.
Legalpad makes it easier and faster for startup founders and teams to get US work visas. So that's what the company does, and Sara is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Legalpad. Moving on to the next question, which is along the similar lines, and I think you've already partially answered it. In this case, this person is currently in India, and they have the visa extension letter. So their visa extension, I'm assuming, has been approved, but it is not stamped. Can they get the visa stamped in India?
So the consulates aren't open. So like right off the bat, can't get a visa stamping in India. If you're currently undergoing a visa transfer to a new company, once that gets approved and you have a valid visa stamp in your passport, probably from your previous company, for example, because they put the company that's sponsoring you, like their name on the visa, you can still use that previous visa sticker to come into the US, but you'll need to bring that approval notice for the new company with you when you're re-entering.
To be clear, this is applicable to all types of visas, even though we are largely thinking about H1B, but the same thing applies to J1s and L1s and so on and so forth.
That's right. But let's also remember that there are visas that aren't impacted by the proclamation at all. So the O1, for example, the extraordinary ability visa, it's not impacted for that.
Any other professional work visa that people use that isn't impacted?
Yeah, so it's like people outside the US who have a valid visa sticker or advanced parole and Canadian citizens. The proclamation does not impact you. USCIS is still taking filings. So if you're already in the US, it doesn't even really impact you then, because you can, for most visa types, you can basically do an extension while you're in the US. It's just generally strongly recommended that you don't travel during this time. And then J1s, other than interns, trainees, teachers and camp counselors, au pairs, or summer work travel participants, it affects those people. But the people who are, J1 scholars, for example, it does not affect them.
Oh, okay. So even within J1, it doesn't impact scholars, but it impacts
interns, trainees, teachers, camp counselors, au pairs, and summer work travel participants.
Got it. Is there like specific within J? Do scholars get a specific J visa and then all the other ones get a different?
Yes, I believe so. So I think you still need to seek as a J1 student. If you're a J1 student, for example, you must seek a national interest waiver at US consulate. And, the US consulate, there's an argument to be made for getting an emergency appointment. But beyond that, that's kind of on a case-by-case basis, and it's difficult to really communicate that on a general level. Doesn't affect other non-immigrant categories. So the E3 for Australian nationals doesn't affect TN for Canadian citizens that are coming in on a TN. Doesn't affect O1, like I mentioned, and it also doesn't affect F1 students. So that's something that we'll be discussing at a different episode, I guess, where we go over all of this student information, people with student visas as well. But if you have a valid F1 visa, this does not impact you.
Got it. So international students can still sort of come in the US and things are fine for them, aside from the ban that we'll talk about separately. Cool. Moving on to the next question. This person says, I'm currently in the US and plan to travel to India. I'm currently undergoing visa transfer to a new company. Does the ban impact H1B visa transfers currently in progress?
No, government is still taking on H1B. So USCIS, which is who you apply your visa to when you're already in the US. They're still taking cases. It's business as usual, as far as we know right now.
Got it. So, but you also strongly recommend to not travel outside the US. this case?
It's usually best to stay in the U.S. because we don't know what kind of like travel measures are going to be in place or anything like that. So if you want to stay in the U.S., it's probably best to stay and avoid any travel in for the rest of the year so far.
Got it. So if you're in the U.S. going on under visa transfer, just preferably don't travel. Next question. This is an international student currently on F1 visa and got selected in the H1B lottery and has applied for consular processing. Is there any impact because of this ban on their application? And what if, and I'm adding a corollary to this, what if someone is on OPT in a similar scenario?
Yeah, perfect. So if you're currently on F1, you were selected for the lottery, you applied for consular processing, it's still going to be processed as consular processing, which means that in order to start your H1B, you'll need to go to the consulate, get the visa sticker. You need to go abroad, go to a consulate, get a visa sticker, and then come back into the US, and that's how you get your H1B status. This differs from another method, which is what we call change of status, where if you're on F1, you file using a change of status, and you check that checkbox on the form. Then you automatically transition into H1B status on October 1st, if your H1B has been approved, right? So this person filed for consular processing, which means that they won't transition directly into H1B status if they stay in the US at that point. So what can happen is if you have time left on OPT, you can still use that. So hopefully there is some leeway on that up to the end of the year if you have time left on OPT. If you applied for CapGap, I believe your OPT status will automatically expire on September 30th. That's always kind of been the rule. And then at which point you may want to talk to an attorney to kind of figure out what your options are on that. Once you find out that your H1B visa has been approved, your company can actually reapply for a change of status, knowing that your H1B has been approved already. But, this isn't just like general advice to people. I would strongly suggest that you speak to an immigration attorney to figure out if that's a good option for you.
Okay. Best case scenario, your OPT is still valid. You're not on CapGap, so you should be fine. And if you're in the U.S., preferably don't travel outside the U.S. Moving on to the next question. So this person says, I'm currently here and my H1B visa is expiring on August 2nd, 2020. My employer is working on filing my extension in the next 15 days. Does this executive order restrict the filing of H1B extensions for the people who are already in the U.S.?
Right. So I think the best thing to just keep in mind is if your employer submits your extension before the expiration date of August 2nd, you have a grace period basically to be in the US while your application is pending. So you should be fine. And again, recommendation is don't travel, if only because it just complicates things for you and for your employer.
Got it.
So, and also, the EO executive order doesn't restrict the filing of H1B extensions because USCIS is still taking applications.
Got it.
So that part is still business as usual again.
Got it. And this is for H1B across any country, right? So it's not just, it's the same across the world, or you mentioned briefly about Canada.
So if you're a Canadian on an H1B, you're not impacted by this ban. We have a special relationship with Canada.
Got it.
So it should be fine. There is one thing that I do want to mention briefly that's slightly unrelated, like it's a different executive proclamation. So the president recently announced that the special relationship that the U.S. has with Hong Kong has come to an end from an immigration from the immigration perspective,
Right.
So basically what this means is that Hong Kong nationals who previously were kind of recognized differently from nationals from mainland China, so the People's Republic of China, PRC, you're now subject to the same kind of rules and requirements as people from the PRC, which means that there are certain validity dates have been truncated. That's the biggest change that we're kind of seeing right now. So for example, H1B and H4 visas, so H4 for dependents, will be reduced, the visa sticker, to be clear, will be reduced from 60 months to 12 months.
Got it. Visa holders from PRC get H1B for 12 months at a time. So now Hong Kong nationals will be the same. And
subject to that.
Yeah.
And it's also H1B visa stickers. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that part. Yeah. And also there are other parts of it too. So like O1 visa stickers will be reduced from 60 months to 3 months maximum to re-enter the US. And again, this really becomes a problem when you're traveling and you're trying to come back in the US because your visa sticker like has a shorter validity period now. And then F1 and J visas, so for students really in particular, it'll be unchanged for the time being. So if you're a student, like you can breathe easy a little bit. I'm sure it's nice to at least know that.